Hello, thank you. It's good to be here. I happened to walk into the room and they said, "Hey, you're the MC now." But how long's Hacker Court? There's been a ninth year, and I was there for I think the very first one, and it's I've been involved in it off and on over the years. It's a fun little thing. This is exactly how regular court works. Okay. There is a completely 100% accurate. So, everyone else sits at a big table. The judge stands back at the back and, waits and stuff. No, it's mainly all the boring parts of court are going to be skipped, and the good parts that are going to be pertinent to what's going on is what's mainly going to be presented to everyone. So let's go through and introduce everyone. We'll talk about who they are. Our judge is Richard Salgado. He's the one in the judge robe, which you got from Judges R Us, I guess. And but he's a professor at Stanford Law. And let's see, where's Carol? Carol is down front. She is our court clerk, our bailiff, and no longer the MC. And she's the one that kind of puts this together every year. This is kind of her baby, so there she is. Prosecutor, Mr. Paul Ohm from the University of Colorado. On defense, we have Kurt, I always get your name wrong. Opsahl. Kurt Opsahl, who's with the EFF. And we also have Kevin Bankston, who's also with the EFF, who's also here. Yeah, very good. We have our case agent, Richard Stroker, who is being portrayed by John Klein, who's right here, who for some reason got out of working at a financial company to come here and play dress up. And let's see here. Carol is also playing the role of Maria Batali, the Director of Security at MyTwitFace. The company in question. We have Biz Zuckerson, the CEO of MyTwitFace, being portrayed by Mr. Richard Thiem here. Joel Hobbs, the defense expert. Name, I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. Oh, that's left over? They filled in his name, actually. See, it's just like regular court. They get things wrong on the slides all the time. Anyway. David Kane Perry, who's right down here, recently engaged. If you saw his talk earlier today, he actually proposed from a slide during his talk at Blackhat. So he is the ultimate nerd. He wins. And then our defendant and my cohort in crime, Weasel, down there. He is the lead coder, and he has Vaporospora. That's the company, I assume, that the project that the evil lead coder. I shouldn't say evil. That's actually far from evil. His attorneys say he's far from evil. Anyway, but he's a fellow guy from NMRC. Anyway, these are the cast of characters here, and I think are we ready to?
Just a quick schedule.
Oh yeah, here's the schedule. I'm not going to read through it. You guys can figure it out. This does span over a break, and you all are, I guess, welcome at that point to take a bio break, but come right back and bring your friends, et cetera, et cetera. Text them, tell them to get in here, et cetera. So with that, I think we're ready to get going. So do I have a...
Bang the podium.
Okay, hold on here a sec. Hear ye. All rise. Hacker Court is now in session. The Honorable Richard Salgado presiding.
You may be seated. You may be seated. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and counsel. I see that the jury has been impaneled and has been sworn, all 12 of you. Counsel, would you please enter your appearances? I'll start with the government.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Paul Ohm, representing the United States of America.
Thank you. Defense?
Kurt Opsahl, representing the defendant.
Kevin Bankston for the defendant. For the defendant.
Thank you, counsel. Before we begin formally, I want to thank the members of the jury for participating today in one of the most important civil duties that you can fulfill, and for not being creative enough to think of a way to avoid the service today. And I'd like, on behalf of the government, to thank you and express my gratitude for your performing the obligations that you have as citizens in this country to ensure that the judicial system is fair and impartial. Let me describe briefly before we begin how the trial is going to proceed. It's a criminal case. That means that the charges are being brought by the United States, the prosecution represented here by Mr. Paul Ohm, against the defendant, who's being represented by counsel who's introduced themselves already. The indictment in this case is a document that sets out the charges against the defendant, and in this case there are 3 charges that have been alleged by the government. Before I go through those, let me say that all this document is a finding by the grand jury that there's probable cause to believe that the defendant has committed the counts that are charged in the indictment, but it is not proof that the defendant is guilty. It is your job to determine whether there has been enough evidence to establish that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt or not. In this case, the defendant is charged with 3 counts. One is eavesdropping illegally on oral communications. The second count is that the defendant illegally intercepted electronic communications. And the third count is that the defendant accessed a computer and obtained information without authorization to do so. Now, this is just a summary of the charges. You'll be getting much more detailed description on the elements that the government has to prove in order to establish a case of guilt against the defendant. For any count, the defendant must be found not guilty if there is not a unanimous verdict in favor of the government that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The first step in this process is going to be opening statements by the government, and if the defense wishes, the defense can then follow with their opening statements. Then we will move on to the presentation of evidence. That's the evidence that you'll be considering in determining whether the defendant is guilty or not the opening statements. Those are just statements of counsel. We will go through the witnesses of the prosecution first, and the defense will have the opportunity to cross-examine. Then we will turn to the defense, and if the defense has witnesses that they would like to call, we will be hearing from the defense witnesses. After that, I will be instructing you on the elements of the crimes that are being charged. You will hear closing arguments to the extent counsel wishes to present those closing arguments, and then you will deliberate, and you will have to determine whether the government has proved its case against the defendants. So with that in mind, let's get started with opening statements. Mr. Ohm, do you have an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor, I do. I'll move down here. My athleticism for the day. Look at that. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you very much once again for your service. I wanted to echo what the judge said. The government, the United States of America, thanks you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to help us talk about what happened here and what brings us to this room. My name is Paul Ohm, as you've heard, and I represent the United States of America. This is a case about a brazen attack on privacy. If you look at the defense table, you'll see a gentleman, perhaps not dressed as nicely as he should be for his day in court. That man, Weasel, is the reason we're all here today. He is a disgruntled ex-employee of MyTwitFace. Now, I know that many of you probably are aware of MyTwitFace. Please put out of your mind what you know about the company, and I'm sure there are even users of the company here, but allow us, through the witnesses, to present the evidence in this case, because this is a case about this man Weasel and what he did to MyTwitFace. He was a man who was once trusted by the company. He was an employee. He was allowed into the inner sanctum of the company. He left under less than savory circumstances, and then he abused that trust. He took what had been given to him by the people who work at this company and essentially threw it on the ground and stamped it underfoot and abused the privacy and trust. But it's worse than that. He chose to victimize not only the company, but also a particular individual, the CEO of the company, Biz Zuckerson. And you'll hear from Biz soon. And you'll be shocked, I believe, to learn what this man did to Biz Zuckerson. He infiltrated this man's laptop, this poor innocent victim. He sat and took control of all of the functionality of that laptop, turning it into a powerful tool of privacy invasion and surveillance. He turned on the video camera to watch what Mr. Zuckerson was doing in the privacy of his home with his friends. He periodically took screenshots to see the private communications that Mr. Zuckerson would have with his colleagues and compatriots. You should begin to see a picture of this man sitting in Mr. Zuckerson's bedroom and his bathroom and his kitchen and his living room. Wherever that laptop went, this man would follow. And thankfully, fortunately, we have laws. We have laws that both punish people for doing things like this man did, and laws that deter others who would follow in the example led by people like this man. And you, the jury, are here today to see if these laws will do justice. You will also hear some testimony today about motive. What would drive an individual to do something like I described? But I want you to be careful. This isn't a morality play. This isn't about weighing whether or not anger or greed or jealousy or whatever motive it is justifies something like this. This is about a man so driven by all of the motives that drove him here today, who continues today to benefit directly and significantly from the acts he did. And so there's going to be a lot of fight about why he didn't do it. But at the end of the day, this isn't about was he right or was he wrong. It was, did he do what the law forbade him from doing? And the last thing I want to say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is these internet-based cases can be quite complicated. You will hear a lot of technical jargon and lingo. It's my job as the attorney to guide the witnesses to explaining what happened today. But understand one thing about this case. This isn't a complicated case that turns on an advanced knowledge of computer networks that requires a PhD to comprehend. No, this is a case where the main proof that the act was done was spoken by the defendant himself. This is a case where the defendant confessed to everything that I've alleged that he has done. And you will hear, through the case agent in this case, the words of the defendant upon arrest confessing to the crime. And so it is for you to sort out some of the other details. The judge will inform you of your duties and tell you how to interpret the law, but that will come at the end of the argument. We think, the government thinks, that after our presentation at the evidence, after the defendant has what he has to say, if he wants to say anything at all, will lead you to the only verdict that is supported by the facts, and that's a verdict of guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. Mr. Opsahl?
Thank you. May it please the court, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Kurt Opsahl, counsel for the defendant. Together with my colleague Kevin Bankson over here at this table, I'm proud and privileged